some sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Friday, March 6th, 2026. And sorry, I'm getting everything set up and going here. 33,000 foreign workers, 33,000. You guys hearing that? 33,000 foreign workers are going to be getting permanent residency because Canada's self-destructing in front of our eyes and we can't do anything but allow it to happen. I guess that's what's going on here. Cure cancer with cheap drugs, straight to jail, right to jail. You can't do that. Overcooked fish, undercooked chicken, you're done, right to jail. We have the best patients in the world because of jail. It's wild. And so that's Dr. Makis, and he wasn't allowed to advertise or talk about his treatments. And now he's going to be a cancer doctor in Florida because Canada is chasing intelligent people out of the country. C-9 is back with a vengeance, and we're going to start with C-9. The CPC is going to help pass it. They're going to pass it as soon as possible. ASAP, expect it to pass. Now they're going to ram it through. And that's, man, it's sad. It's a sad situation that we're in. Alberta independence is very popular. And so there's people who are showing up and doing all the Alberta independency kind of stuff. And gas prices and Iran, that's interesting. Buy Canadian, not if you're the government. There are rules, but they don't apply to the government. So you can buy Canadian if you're not the government. But if you are the government, you can do whatever the hell you want. And accountability, pish posh. Canadians don't do that apparently. Neither does anybody. Neither does anybody at this point in time. So it's pretty wild. So for another hour of crying with Mark, here we go. Lots to get to. Let's get to it first. C9 and Garnet Genius. He says, I'm saying his name wrong, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Genis? Is it supposed to be Genis? He says, whoa. Carney is now trying to ram through Bill C-9 without further debate on all remaining clauses at committee. This is deeply disturbing. Call your MP now and tell them to oppose this attack on freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Well, the people who work in our government will probably take your name and your number and give it to the police and say, this person is a far-right activist who probably has guns. So if you call your MP, be aware that they'll use it and snitch on you that you didn't like all of the great, wonderful speech controls that they're passing. And then they might leak it to the police and leak it to other people to say, oh, you're danger or whatever. And am I being hyperbolic? I don't think so. During 2019, during that period of time, the police were going to PPC rallies and taking pictures of people's license plates. This is insane. This is not how a democracy works. Not even close. Not even close. Andrew Lawton says, breaking, the Liberals have put a motion on notice in the House of Commons to cut off debate on Bill C-9 and force all amendments to a vote with no discussion. They're censoring debate on their censorship bill. And so, oh my gosh, who's going to pass it? They don't have a majority. What do they need to do? So the NDP, Elizabeth May, all of the floor crossers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Pierre Poilievre passed the budget by hiding Andrew Scheer in the curtains. And he allowed other situations where they could have forced an election, but they didn't. They allowed the government, this government to continue. He is complicit. He's vacationing in England. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. Okay? He doesn't care. In fact, it's all part and parcel of his plan too. They're all doing the same thing. They're all working for the same people. I wish it weren't so, but my goodness, it's so. Western Standard says Canadian Scientific Journal failed to indicate 138 of its reports were fictional. The government is allowed to lie to you, but you are not allowed to put your opinion online just in case somebody finds it hateful. And if you do put your opinion online and somebody does find it hateful, then they are going to crush you economically. They'll say, you know what? You don't like trans people, you're hateful towards trans people, you're going to get $1 million fine for every instance of hate that we decide that you said during your entire show. Though all of it that's still online, every single one of those is subject to the same standard, and we are going to go through your back catalog and give you a fine for every single instance, every single one. And then, you get your $400 million fine or whatever it is. And what do you like? Okay, yeah, I'm bankrupt now. So are you happy, Canadian government? Like, now I've got nothing to lose. So it's a situation where they can lie to you. And if you express your opinion, oh no, sir, you're a terrorist. And that's crazy. That's not how any kind of participatory system works. If you're participating in government, you have a right to say, we shouldn't do that. If you're a subject of a king and you say we shouldn't do that, then they crush you and throw you in jail. See the difference? We're in the second one. unfortunately. Travis, he used to work for the CBC. I'm very skeptical of people who used to work for the CBC because of Project Mockingbird. Project Mockingbird realized early already that people stopped watching television. The people that matter stopped watching television because television's stupid and it just is propaganda. And so people have stopped watching TV, so they needed to get their Project Mockingbird people out into the internet world. And how do you do that? You set up a fight between the person who is going to be that face for the Project Mockingbird thing and CBC to have a war, right? Here you go. And so I'm skeptical. I take it with a grain of salt. Maybe he's genuine. Maybe he's going to expose the CBC with names and stuff. But from my experience, nobody cares and nobody will do anything. And if you tried to do something, they'll label you as a terrorist. So we live in a Iranian mullah situation, except there's no hijabs, but you have to be LGBT positive or they will absolutely destroy your life. And it's weird. It's weird. And that's just one aspect. Like you have to be other things positive too, or they'll destroy your life. And it's crazy. Like it's crazy. If you like the wrong political party, if you're like Donald Trump is doing what's right for America, they want to destroy your life. And that's crazy. That's not how this is supposed to work, but it's how it's working now. Travis says, my message to Canadians and the CBC: on March 10th, I will testify before the Heritage Committee under parliamentary privilege. I will name names and present facts about what went on in CBC News. You won't want to miss this because it matters. So the news is going to miss this. They're going to whistle on past by the graveyard. I might report on it, probably, right? We'll listen to what he has to say anyway. But I don't have a far enough reach by design, right? They don't want me to have a far enough reach. Okay, fine, whatever. But people who watch me and know about this aren't going to change the tide. And that's, again, a sad situation to be in. This is all free speech related, and they limit the ability for us to have discord, even though it seems like we have a lot of ability to talk to each other. We don't. Holly Doan says, feds censor as confidential files on what Kamloops First Nations did with the $12.1 million funding to recover alleged Indian residential school graves. First Nation residential school graves? Not to be politically correct or anything like that. I just find it funny how you can flip between Indian and First Nations, and if you don't say it in the right context, then you're being insensitive or something like that. I showed my daughter The Indian in the Cupboard. I was like, I love this book when I was a kid, and she's like, so the Indian lives in the cupboard? I was like, oh my gosh, oh, that's yes, but he's a little Indian, okay? He's not like that. Oh my gosh, so. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I'm just trying to juxtapose the interesting, you can say Indian act, you can say, right? But in speaking now, people get itchy if you start saying Indian, right? And it's funny. I find it funny because some places you can say it, right? And like rap music, right? You can't say that one word unless you're rapping. Okay. And then if you're rapping, it's just fine. Sure. All over the radio, all the time, but you can't say that. All right, sure. Sounds perfect. You guys are totally sane, and this is for sure definitely normal and not really effing weird. And again, if they've got files in Kamloops about the residential schools and the waste what they wasted the $12.1 million on, and they won't tell us, that is another form of censorship. We're not allowed to know why. Oh, because we might get upset about it. Why would we get upset about it? Because they didn't use the money for what they were saying they were going to use the money for. If they did, they wouldn't have censored all of these things. They lie to us and expect us to shut up and take it. And that's where the laws are going. And that's terrible. Tim is talking about the government of BC. Tim says, government using Tumblr Ridge for greater access to your AI chats definitely won't be abused by the guys celebrating $750,000 penalties for misgendering. David Eby says, we must do everything possible to prevent a tragedy like the one that happened in Tumblr Ridge from occurring again. This afternoon, Tumblr Ridge Mayor Daryl Kay and I met with the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman. We agreed to work together with the federal government to make sure that AI companies in Canada that flag accounts for potentially harmful activities report these accounts to authorities. So the AI is going to be spying on you, and if you do anything weird, it's going to report you to the authorities. And that's not good. You have a babysitter that's AI, right? That's not good. That's a bad thing. And Tumblr Ridge, Sandy Hook, all of these school shootings are, I don't want to say false flags. That's not it, right? But they're used by the left to justify further constrictions and removals of freedoms. And everybody is you can't oppose feeding children. You can't say this is a bad idea because people say, oh, you're a monster. You don't want to feed children. So keeping kids safe, this Tumbler Ridge disaster could have been avoided. And all we needed to do is blah. But you don't see the other side of it, right? There's another side to that coin. And the pearl clutching and, oh, won't somebody think of the children is a Trojan horse to get you to put your guard down. And then all of a sudden you see the other side of the coin and you think to yourself, holy shit, this thing's just babysitting me. This thing's just making sure that I believe in the narrative enough that I'm not going to do anything about the lies that I'm being told, right? And so it's a pretty wild ride, man. And they use these things. Don't ever let a disaster, manufactured or not, false flag or not, go to waste, right? Holly Doan says Canadian Human Rights Tribunal awards Alberta truck driver Gurbach Singh, I'm terrible at names, I'm sorry, $30,000 in damages for discrimination. Doubting the severity of the injury, name-calling and swearing at the complainant were serious enough to create a poisoned work environment. So here's $30,000 from the Human Rights Tribunal. Needs to be abolished. The whole thing is done. It is just done to punish one group of people and prioritize another group of people. And those groups may be different in the details, but broadly, you can see the pattern if you look. This person says annualized United Kingdom spending. This is just free speech and how we're descending into the same nightmare as the United Kingdom, okay? And it's worse than the Soviet Union. Worse by a lot. By a lot. These people are crazier than you think, I think. He says annualized UK speech prosecutions are running at about 17 times those of the Soviet Union under Brezhnev. I don't know the name, I'm sorry. Of course, the USSR had 4 times the population, so more like 68 times the prosecutions per person per year. That's not good. And they want to bring that kind of stuff to Canada with Bill C-9. The United Kingdom is being compared to the Soviet Union. And I don't think it's far off. I think the comparison is right on. And we're enthusiastically marching in the same direction. Terribly. Rob Rinder says, I've written to every member of Parliament in England today. And he says, proposals before Parliament would remove jury trials from offences carrying up to 3 years in prison. Freedoms rarely vanish overnight. They are chipped away at in the name of efficiency. Juries did not cause the crisis in our courts. Removing them will not fix it. When the state seeks to take someone's liberty for serious offences, the judgment of ordinary citizens should never be optional. This is close to becoming law. Please read the letter and contact your MP now. They're doing it everywhere. It's not just here. They're doing it everywhere. And that doesn't make it okay. Just like the 40 kilometers an hour everywhere. It doesn't make it okay. And soon they're going to set up speed traps and start taking people out, taking people's cars and stuff. You illegitimize the whole licensing situation if you create criminals by reducing the speed limit. If you make the speed limit 30 kilometers an hour and say you were driving double the speed limit, which sounds bad until you realize it's 60 kilometers an hour and all the roads are built for cars to drive 50 to 60 kilometers an hour in the city. So they're criminalizing people by changing the laws under your feet and then blaming you and throwing you in jail and removing your license, et cetera, when you rightly stand up and say, this is stupid. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. There's no kids here. It's 2:00 in the morning. Why am I stopping at this light? It's insane, right? Why are the lights allowing people to walk who aren't there at 2:00 in the morning to delay the cars driving, but they haven't increased the green time. The green time is eaten up by that walking time on the lights. Fewer cars get through. They're trying to piss people off to get them out of their cars and say, oh, yes, well, self-driving cars, you don't have to worry about it. You just sit on your phone and hypnotize yourself. It is a war, and we are losing badly. And it's terrible to watch. Dr. Leslyn Lewis, MP in Canada, says Prime Minister Carney, we'll talk about the war in Iran and then I'll have to say goodbye to the stream. Leslyn Lewis says Prime Minister Carney had the opportunity to take a clear position on Iran. Instead, within days, his public comments have ranged from calling for de-escalation to not ruling out involving Canada's military. If such action is believed to violate international law, Canadians deserve to know why participation is even being considered. If it does not violate international law, Canadians deserve to know why Canada did not support it. What international law are we talking about? How about we scrap international law? Because I think international law is bullshit, and we start figuring out a way to prioritize Canada and Canadians and get every single person who thinks international law is paramount out of the House of Commons. International law is paramount in certain situations, and I don't want to burn down inter-country relations or anything like that, but it seems international law is being used as a justification to open the floodgates of immigration and saying, oh, wow, there's refugees from India? I thought India was a peaceful country. They're exporting tons of money or tons of stuff. Like, war's there like it's here, right? Unless you're close to Pakistan, I guess. But we're importing all these people, and they justify it by bullshit, basically. And they just ignore us. International law? What international law? Somebody says I'm a refugee and it's like, okay, rape these kids. What? How? International law? This doesn't make any rational sense to me at all. Do you have control of international law? What international laws specifically? Can you cite a code? At moments like this, continues Lewis, Canadians need steady leadership and clarity about where our country stands. Creating confusion about Canada's position and the role of international law is not leadership. International law, like NATO, like the United Nations. NATO, international law. You should give 2% of your GDP for NATO defense, and everybody contributes equally, and it's real fair, except for the United States pays for all of it, and except for that 2% that we don't pay. And so, like, we don't pay international law. You know, oh, we're so compliant with international law. We're not gonna give you that 2% that we promised every year for, you know, military defense and all the rest. But international law, you can't do that because of international law. But we don't do the responsibilities that we have under, quote, international law. So bullshit. It's toothless. It's ridiculous, and we should get rid of it. Here's Disclosed TV. CENTCOM says it has hit an Iranian drone carrier, roughly the size of a World War II carrier. Aircraft carrier, and that the U.S. Air Force, U.S. forces aren't holding back on their mission to sink the entirety of the Iranian Navy. Now, I feel like the headline is being buried here. This is a drone ship, a drone carrier, the size of an aircraft carrier. Drones. And Iran's using drones hitting like Azerbaijan. No, is it? Yeah, Azerbaijan. I'm getting that wrong. There's another name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. The airport in Azerbaijan. Iran reportedly drone strikes it. So they've got this massive World War II era aircraft carrier traveling around with drones flying off of it. Do they have a fabrication unit in the aircraft carrier? Probably, right? Fabricate needs some more drones and we're going to send them out. And so this is going to be a nightmare. Remember landmines? I was a kid when landmines were a problem, and like people would send mice. There were like mice to go and like trigger the landmines and clear these landmine things. And drones, I think, are going to be just like landmines, except they're flying and they could attack you at any time. And I think they desperately want it to be that kind of like clear and present danger. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not wanting that to happen. But can you imagine if, you know, there's, oh no, we're under attack and it's a drone attack and like your house could get blown up, or, you know, if you get too close to a drone, it goes like in Call of Duty, where it's like a bomb. If you get too close, it notices you move and boom. Like, the potential for this to go badly is ridiculously high. And I don't think there's a save point. Is there a save point? 1992, let's go back. Here's Mark Carney talking about how the United States is, he wants, I'll just let him say it. Here we go.
Secondly, in terms of war, there are likelihoods, there are possibilities. You have to plan for the worst, but there are no certainties in conflict. And so now that the conflict has moved on, now that the conflict is involving a much wider group, but even if, I don't want to say even if, but moving into the Gulf, moving into civilian infrastructure, we're saying a few things. One, it is not solely the decision of the principal belligerents to move to the de-escalation. Secondly, in terms...
So this is House of Commons staffer just talking about, apparently we're floating the idea of going to war, supporting this but not supporting this. Here's the Canadian military leader, what's her name, Jeannie Kerrigan, and she's very woke, and she says, we're not... So I misspoke. We're not actually going to join the United States in doing anything in Iran. We're going to defend our Middle Eastern comrades. Wish I was kidding.
On the transformation aspect, all the services are ongoing, major, massive transformation. The Air Force, Navy, and Army of the future will look very different in 10 years' time. But also you've heard about Joint Forces Command just before this panel, I understand.
Yes.
So the lead point to lead the joint capabilities, because the future will all be about pan-domain operation, and we have to make sure that we give ourselves the tool to manage this pan-domain, which has not been a priority in the past, but now with the ongoing analysis of future battlefields, we need to be able to consolidate our domain awareness amongst all services, but also being able to evolve in the defeat and defense space.
That's not the video that I thought it was. Apologies. I saw a video just earlier and I thought this was it. Maybe this is it. Maybe I've got it around here somewhere, where she's talking about defending our Middle Eastern friends. And I thought that was interesting. So I guess I just grabbed the wrong one. Apologies about that. But she's saying that the army will look very different. Their major transformation and will look very different in 10 years. Yeah, I bet. Lots more, quote, diversity, right? Stephen says, breaking, this is quite something. Qatar's energy ministers told the FT that war in the Middle East could bring down the economies of the world. He says it will hit growth, push up energy bills, and lead to shortages of products. Saad al-Kabi says that even if the war ended immediately, it would take Qatar weeks to months to return to normal deliveries after the Ras Laffan plant was bombed by Israel. While only a small portion of Qatar's gas goes to Europe, the halt in the production means there will be a global bidding war for what remains on the market. This will bring down the economies of the world, he said. If this war continues for a few weeks, GDP growth around the world will be impacted. Everybody's energy price is going to go higher. There will be shortages of some products, and there will be a chain reaction of factories that cannot supply. This is Qatar telling the United States in the strongest possible terms to bring the conflict to an end, or everyone will face the consequences. So, well, we'll see, I guess. It sounds like exactly what the globalists want, right? It sounds like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. Let's do that. Let's lean right into that. Che says American media calls the bombing of 7 countries and the destruction of Palestine an opportunity to reshape the region. Russia intervenes to save Russians from genocide in Ukraine, unprovoked full-scale invasion. So, a manipulation by the press on purpose, because they generally hate us, I think. Hegseth is saying that they're not going to bring Iranians to the United States as refugees. That's not part of the plan. And with that, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. If not, that's okay. I'll be around tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on in the stream as soon as I end the stream. Done recording. Good. We're not going to listen to Hegseth because he's just reiterating what I just said. Dan McTeague's talking about prices of gas. He says after gas prices rise 2 cents a liter on Friday and diesel prices up 4 cents a liter, gasoline is expected to rise 5 cents a liter on Saturday, with diesel up 6 cents. That means gasoline will have risen 17 cents in less than a week, diesel up 34 cents. So we're going to have to see what's going on. I thought this Strait of Hormuz thing was sorted, Donald Trump. You told us it was sorted. Peaceful strength to reinforce democracy says, Dear RCMP, if this is real, and it appears that it is, should Canadians be warned about this? Should the RCMP be involved in telling Canadians? And Yasser Ben Yaker says, a UK-based preacher at an Islamic festival in Norway recently explained to his audience exactly why Muslims have a right to kill non-Muslims. In his view, labeling these killers as terrorists is the real crime of Islamophobia and bigotry. This is no longer about fringe. And no, it's true. And they do openly call for violence against specific people. And that's not good, right? Peter says, we demand immediate answers from Kiev regarding large cash shipments passing through Hungary that raise serious questions about a possible link to Ukrainian war mafia. Since January, $900 million and $420 million in cash, as well as 146 kilograms of gold have been transported across Hungary. If this is truly a transaction between banks, why was it not carried out by transfer? Why move such enormous sums in cash through our country? According to the National Tax and Customs Administration, the latest shipment was escorted by former Ukrainian Intelligence Services General. Until Kiev provides clear explanations about the origin and purpose of the funds, Hungarian authorities will conduct a thorough investigation. Yep. And, oh, here it is. I told you. Here it is. This is the video that was just missing. Here she says, we're going to defend our Gulf allies. Long time coming. Here you go.
We are not talking about participating to Epic Fury per se. This is not a mission that we are considering. However, our Gulf partners may require defense and support. So within that context, these would be the type of military options that we could consider. We are not talking.
Darn. I mixed up the order. Apologies. But yeah, they want to defend their Gulf partners. So, oh, Canada. Britain is broken as well. Ukraine's not a NATO country. Cyprus is not a NATO country, but David Lammy says it is. Breaking, David Lammy, who's the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, just said Cyprus is a NATO country on live TV. We are sending forces to support Cyprus because Cyprus is a NATO country. Nope. No, it isn't, according to Britain is Broken. How on God's green earth is this man Deputy Prime Minister? See, it gets to a point where you're like, I could do a better job. You don't even know the basics, man. Like, what is wrong with you? And then people take over, and they don't want that. So, table salt again. Breaking, Carney proposes a new middle power world order in Australia. Says the ability to push back against the hegemon of United States and China come from the fact that we're trusted. We mean what we say. This is a source of power. What? What is it? This is just nonsense. Here's Carney talking about this. And the United States is, if you don't have access to the U.S. market, then a lot of the financials of companies don't